Captain Zorble's antennae twitched nervously as he stared at the readout on his console. The Glimmerwing research vessel Peaceful Inquiry had been conducting a routine survey of the Kepler 442 system when their sensors picked up something that definitely wasn't supposed to be there. "Captain," chirped Navigator Pip, her voice pitched higher than usual with excitement, "there's a life pod drifting near the asteroid field. Looks like someone's in trouble." Zorble's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he processed this information. The Glimmerwings were a peaceful species, known throughout the galaxy for their scholarly pursuits and their unfortunate tendency to stick their proboscis into other people's business in the name of scientific curiosity. "Bring it up on the main viewer," Zorble commanded, his wing arms fluttering with anticipation. The screen flickered to life, showing a battered escape pod spinning lazily through space. Through the small viewport, they could make out a figure slumped inside, clearly unconscious. "Oh dear," muttered Dr. Fizbin from her position at the medical station. "That doesn't look good at all. We should bring them aboard immediately." "Wait just a quantum-damned minute," interrupted Clixon, the ship's engineer. His voice carried that special tone of paranoia that had made him famous among the crew for predicting 17 different catastrophes that never happened. "Don't we need to identify the species first? What if it's something dangerous?" Zorble's antennae drooped slightly. Clixon had a point, but the figure in the pod was clearly dying. "Pip, can you get a species identification?" "Running scans now," Captain Pip replied, her fingers dancing over the controls. After a moment, her face went pale. Oh my. "Captain, it's a human." The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of the life support systems. Even the usually chatty computer seemed to hold its breath. "A human," Clixon repeated, his voice climbing toward hysteria. "A human. Captain, do you have any idea what humans are capable of?" "I've read the reports. They're completely insane. They voluntarily throw themselves out of aircraft for fun. They've been known to fight wars over the proper pronunciation of words. And don't even get me started on their mating rituals." "Clixon," Dr. Fizbin interrupted gently, "the human is dying. Whatever reputation they have, we can't just let someone die in space." Zorble made the decision that would change everything. "Bring them aboard. Dr. Fizbin, prepare the medical bay. Pip, use the tractor beam to pull in that pod. And Clixon, stop hyperventilating before you pass out." 20 minutes later, they had the unconscious human secured in their medical bay. Dr. Fizbin worked with practiced efficiency, her 6 arms simultaneously running diagnostics, administering medications, and monitoring vital signs. Severe dehydration, multiple contusions, what appears to be radiation poisoning, and she paused, consulting her medical scanner. "Something the computer is calling acute pizza withdrawal. I'm not sure what that last one means, but it sounds serious." The human was tall by Glimmerwing standards, with dark hair and what appeared to be some kind of primitive body art covering his arms. His clothing was torn and scorched, suggesting whatever had happened to his ship hadn't been pleasant. "Is he going to survive?" Zorble asked, genuinely concerned. "I believe so," Dr. Fizbin replied, injecting another dose of healing accelerant. "Humans are remarkably resilient, almost annoyingly so, according to my medical databases. They have a disturbing tendency to survive things that would kill most other species." Clixon, who had been lurking near the doorway, finally worked up the courage to speak. "Captain, I really think we should reconsider this. What if other humans come looking for him? What if they think we kidnapped him? What if they declare war on us? I've heard humans can hold grudges for generations." "Clixon," Zorble said firmly, "we are researchers, not warriors. We help people. It's what we do." "But Captain." "No buts. We're not abandoning someone in space, regardless of species. Now, let's see if we can figure out who this human is and how he ended up floating around in an escape pod." As if on cue, the human's eyes fluttered open. He looked around the medical bay with obvious confusion, his gaze settling on Dr. Fizbin's concerned face. "Well," he said weakly, his voice carrying a strange accent, "I don't suppose you folks know the way to Alpha Centauri?" The human had introduced himself as Jake Murphy, and within 6 hours of waking up, he had somehow managed to reorganize their entire medical bay, fix a recurring glitch in the food processors, and accidentally improve their engine efficiency by 12%. "I don't understand," Captain Zorble muttered to Dr. Fizbin as they watched Jake crawling around inside an access panel, cheerfully humming something he called classic rock. "How does he even know how our systems work?" "I have no idea," Dr. Fizbin replied, checking her medical notes. "According to his scans, he's a cargo hauler by profession. No advanced engineering training, no xenotechnology experience. He just looks at things and somehow knows how to make them better." Jake's voice echoed from inside the panel. "Hey Doc, you've got a loose coupling in here that's been making your plasma conduits work overtime. Mind if I tighten it up?" "Please do," Dr. Fizbin called back, then whispered to Zorble. "This is exactly what I was afraid of." "Afraid of him fixing our ship?" "Afraid of him being helpful. Do you know how guilty I'm going to feel when we inevitably disappoint him somehow?" Meanwhile, Clixon had spent the better part of the day researching human military history, and the results were not reassuring. He cornered Navigator Pip in the galley, waving a data pad frantically. "Pip, you have to see this," he said, his voice tight with panic. "Did you know humans once fought a war that lasted over 100 years? Over what? A succession dispute. And another one that started because someone shot an archduke." "Clixon, you're spiraling again," Pip said calmly, continuing to prepare her afternoon snack of fermented algae cakes. "I'm not spiraling, I'm being appropriately concerned. Look at this, humans have a concept called proportional response, but their definition of proportional includes something called nuclear deterrence. Do you know what nuclear deterrence means, Pip? I'm guessing it's not good? It means they build weapons so destructive that the mere threat of using them prevents wars. What kind of species thinks that's a reasonable solution to conflict?" Pip considered this. "Well, if it prevents wars—" "That's not the point," Clixon interrupted. "The point is they're willing to build planet-killing weapons just to make a point. And we have one of them on our ship, probably reporting back to his people about our defensive capabilities." "Clixon," Jake spent the morning fixing our coffee maker. "I don't think he's conducting reconnaissance." "That's exactly what a spy would want us to think." In the engineering section, Jake had discovered their communication array was functioning at about 60% efficiency due to what he diplomatically called creative wiring solutions. "No offense," he told Chief Engineer Blorp, "but whoever installed this system must have been drunk, blind, or possibly both. You've got signal degradation, feedback loops, and I'm pretty sure this component here is actually from a food processor." Blorp's tentacles writhed with embarrassment. The installation manual was unclear. "Hey, no judgment," Jake said, already pulling out tools. "I once tried to install a shower and ended up flooding my entire apartment. These things happen. Mind if I clean this up for you?" Within an hour, their communication array was functioning at 115% efficiency, and then, he just saw. Jake was explaining the principles of signal amplification using terms that somehow made perfect sense, despite being completely different from standard glimmerwing engineering theory. "The thing is," Jake continued, "you just need to think about information flow like water flow. Find the bottlenecks, clear them out, and everything works better. Simple." "Simple," Blorp repeated weakly. That evening, the crew gathered for their daily meal, which now tasted significantly better thanks to Jake's improvements to their food processors. The human seemed completely at ease, chatting about his cargo run and the pirate attack that had forced him to abandon ship. "So there I was," Jake said, gesturing with his eating utensil, cargo hold full of medical supplies bound for the Centauri colony, when these pirates came out of nowhere. Nasty-looking bunch, all scales and attitude. They demanded I surrender my cargo, and I told them it was medical supplies for sick colonists. What happened then? Pip asked, genuinely curious. Jake shrugged. They didn't care. Started shooting up my ship anyway. I managed to get to the escape pod, but the hyperdrive was already overloading. Last thing I saw was my ship going up like a firework. That's terrible, Dr. Fizbin said sympathetically. Yeah, well, that's the risk you take in this business. At least the colonists will get their supplies eventually. My company has insurance and they'll send another shipment. Jake paused, looking thoughtful. Actually, I should probably contact Earth and let them know I'm okay. My friends will start worrying if I don't check in soon. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Clixon's face went pale. Your friends? Captain Zorble asked carefully. Yeah, my crew back home. We all look out for each other, you know. If someone goes missing, everybody pitches in to help find them. It's just what you do. Clixon made a small whimpering sound and excused himself from the table. Is he okay? Jake asked, concerned. Oh, Clixon's fine, Dr. Fizbin said quickly. He's just processing. We're not used to having humans aboard. Really? That's weird. You folks seem pretty cool to me. I mean, you saved my life and all. Where I come from, that makes us friends for life. Captain Zorble felt a strange chill run down his spine. Something about the casual way Jake said friends for life suggested it meant something very different to humans than it did to Glimmerwings. In his quarters, Clixon was frantically researching human social structures and becoming increasingly alarmed by what he found. 3 days later, Clixon's worst fears were realized when Navigator Pip's voice crackled over the intercom with barely contained panic. Captain, to the bridge immediately. We've got company, and it's big. Zorble rushed to the bridge to find his crew staring at the main viewer in shock. Where empty space had been moments before, there was now a fleet of human ships that seemed to stretch from horizon to horizon. The vessels were sleek, angular, and radiated an unmistakable aura of barely contained violence. How many ships? Zorble asked weakly. I've counted 47 so far, Pip replied, her voice climbing toward hysteria, but they keep appearing. I think they're using some kind of stealth technology. The lead ship was enormous, easily 10 times the size of the Peaceful Inquiry. Its hull was covered in what appeared to be weapons arrays, sensor clusters, and things that looked ominously like missile launchers. Incoming transmission, announced the communications officer, his tentacles trembling. On screen, Zorble commanded, though he was beginning to suspect this was going to be the last command he ever gave. The viewer flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a human face that could have been carved from granite. The man's eyes were steel gray, his jaw was set in a line that suggested he'd never smiled in his life, and his uniform was covered in more insignia than seemed physically possible. This is Admiral Stone of the Earth Defense Force, the human said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made planets surrender without firing a shot. You are currently in possession of Earth citizen Jake Murphy. You will return him to us immediately, or we will be forced to take alternative measures. Captain Zorble's antennae went completely flat against his head. Admiral, I assure you Mr. Murphy is here voluntarily. We rescued him from an escape pod and have been providing medical care. I wasn't asking for an explanation, Admiral Stone interrupted. I was informing you of the situation. You have 1 hour to prepare Mr. Murphy for transport. Any deviation from these instructions will be interpreted as an act of aggression against Earth. The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. An act of aggression, Dr. Fizbin repeated faintly, against Earth. The entire planet. Where's Jake? Zorble asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Engineering, Pip replied. He's been helping Blorp recalibrate the plasma manifolds. Get him up here. Now. Jake arrived on the bridge 2 minutes later, wiping his hands on a rag and looking completely relaxed, despite the fact that they were surrounded by enough firepower to sterilize a small moon. Hey, Captain, what's all the fuss about? Pip said you needed me urgently. He glanced at the main viewer, where the human fleet was maintaining a perfect formation that somehow managed to look both beautiful and terrifying. Oh, cool. The cavalry arrived. The cavalry. Zorble squeaked. Yeah, that's Admiral Stone's flagship. Looks like they brought the whole 7th Fleet. That's actually pretty impressive response time, considering we're about 40 light-years from Earth. The whole fleet, Clixon whispered from where he'd been hiding behind a console. For one person. Well, yeah, Jake said, as if this was the most obvious thing in the galaxy. I mean, they couldn't just leave me out here, right? That wouldn't be very friendly. Before anyone could respond to this casual redefinition of the word friendly, the communications array lit up like a festival display. Dozens of incoming transmissions from ships that definitely weren't human. Captain, the communications officer reported, his voice climbing toward panic, we're being hailed by the Centauri Republic, the Vegan Trade Consortium, the Andromedan Defense League, and something called the Emergency Diplomatic Response Team of the Galactic Council. Answer the Galactic Council first, Zorble decided. The screen filled with the image of Ambassador Quicksnort, a dignified member of the Rigelian species whose normally calm demeanor appeared to be cracking under stress. Captain Zorble, Ambassador Quicksnort said without preamble, what in the name of all sacred quantum particles have you done? Half the galaxy is in panic mode because Earth has mobilized a war fleet. We rescued an injured human, Zorble replied weakly. You what? The ambassador's voice rose to a pitch that probably wasn't healthy for Rigelian vocal cords. Do you have any idea what you've started? The Centaurians have activated their emergency defense protocols. The vegans are threatening to close all trade routes in this sector. And the Andromedans are demanding an immediate explanation for what they're calling an unprecedented display of human aggression. Jake stepped forward. Hey there, Ambassador. Jake Murphy, Earth Cargo Services. Sorry about all the fuss. Could you maybe tell everyone to calm down? Nobody's being aggressive here. Ambassador Quicksnort stared at Jake for a long moment. You're the human they came for. Yep, that's me. They brought 57 ships for you. 57. Including 3 dreadnoughts. Wow, 3 dreadnoughts. That's actually kind of flattering. Jake paused thoughtfully. Though I guess it makes sense. Admiral Stone always was thorough. Thorough? Ambassador Quicksnort's voice cracked completely. Mr. Murphy, your species has just demonstrated that they're willing to mobilize a significant portion of their military for a single individual. Do you understand the implications of this? Jake looked genuinely confused. Not really, no. I mean, wouldn't your people do the same thing? The ambassador's silence spoke volumes. Admiral Stone materialized on the bridge of the Peaceful Inquiry in a shower of blue sparks, accompanied by 6 heavily armed Marines who immediately took positions around the room as if they expected an attack at any moment. The Admiral himself was even more intimidating in person, standing nearly 7 feet tall and radiating the kind of confidence that came from having never lost a fight. Mr. Murphy, the Admiral said, his voice carrying a tone of relief that he probably didn't realize was audible. Are you injured? Have you been coerced? Do you require immediate medical attention? Admiral Stone. Jake grinned and stepped forward as if he was going to hug the terrifying military commander. Good to see you, sir. No, I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. These folks saved my life and fixed me right up. The Admiral's gray eyes swept over the Glimmerwing crew with the kind of analytical intensity usually reserved for targeting systems. I see. And your captors have treated you well? Captors? Jake laughed. Sir, these aren't captors, they're the good guys. They pulled me out of a blown escape pod and patched me up. Dr. Fizbin here is amazing, she had me back on my feet in no time. Dr. Fizbin tried to make herself smaller as the Admiral's attention focused on her. I just followed standard medical protocols, she squeaked. Dr. Fizbin, the Admiral said formally, on behalf of Earth and the Sol System Alliance, I thank you for your care of our citizen. He paused, then added, I'll need a complete medical report for our files, of course. Standard procedure. Of course, Dr. Fizbin agreed, though she wasn't entirely sure what she was agreeing to. Captain Zorble found his voice. Admiral, we want you to know that we never intended to cause any diplomatic incidents. We simply couldn't leave Mr. Murphy to die in space. Understood, Captain, the Admiral replied. Your actions are commendable and will be noted in our official report. However, I must insist that you accept compensation for your efforts. Compensation? Zorble's antennae twitched nervously. That's not necessary, Admiral. We were happy to help. The Admiral's expression didn't change, but somehow he managed to look even more intimidating. Captain, Earth does not leave debts unpaid. You saved the life of one of our people. That requires appropriate compensation. Before Zorble could protest further, the communications array erupted in a cacophony of incoming calls. Ships were arriving from every major power in the local galactic arm, all demanding explanations for what the Centaurian news network was already calling the Murphy incident. Admiral, Jake said, looking slightly embarrassed, this is getting kind of out of hand. Maybe we should tell everyone I'm okay and they can all go home? Negative, Mr. Murphy. Standard retrieval protocols are in effect until we've completed our investigation and ensured your safety. Investigation? Clixon whispered from his hiding spot behind the navigation console. The Admiral heard him anyway. Standard procedure when a civilian is found in alien custody. We need to verify that no coercion occurred and that all parties acted in good faith. A new voice crackled over the communications system. Admiral Stone, this is President Vex Tar of the Vegan Trade Consortium. We demand an immediate explanation for this military buildup in neutral space. The Admiral touched his communicator. President Vex Tar, this is a routine civilian rescue operation. No threat to consortium interests is intended. Routine? President Vex Tar's voice climbed several octaves. Admiral, you've brought enough firepower to level a planet for one cargo hauler. Affirmative, the Admiral replied, as if this was perfectly reasonable. Jake looked around the bridge, finally beginning to understand that something unusual was happening. Admiral? Is this really standard procedure? Because everyone seems pretty upset about it. Mr. Murphy, Earth policy is clear, no human left behind, no exceptions, no matter the cost. This deployment is well within normal parameters for a civilian rescue. Captain Zorble felt his knees go weak. Normal parameters? Of course. We've had to retrieve humans from hostile environments before. Pirates, slavers, the occasional misunderstanding with local authorities. The key is overwhelming force applied quickly and decisively. Dr. Fizbin raised a tentative hand. Admiral, when you say overwhelming force, standard doctrine calls for sufficient firepower to handle any conceivable resistance. In this case, given that Mr. Murphy was found in an unknown vessel in potentially hostile space, the 7th Fleet deployment was deemed appropriate. The entire 7th Fleet, Ambassador Quicksnort's voice cut in over the comm system, for one cargo hauler. Correct, the Admiral confirmed. There was a long pause as everyone tried to process this information. Admiral, Jake said slowly, I think maybe Earth's definition of standard procedure might be a little different from everyone else's. The Admiral looked genuinely puzzled. Mr. Murphy, You're our people. We look after our people. What's complicated about that? Nothing, sir. It's just that apparently most species don't mobilize entire battle fleets when someone goes missing. Then how do they get their people back? Another long pause. They ask nicely? Captain Zorble suggested weakly. The Admiral stared at him. And if that doesn't work? They ask again? The Admiral's expression suggested he was beginning to understand why humans had such a reputation in this part of the galaxy. Gentlemen, he said formally, I believe we may have a cultural misunderstanding on our hands. What followed could only be described as the most awkward diplomatic incident in galactic history. Within 6 hours, representatives from every major power within 50 light years had arrived to observe what the Galactic Council was now calling a fascinating study in human behavioral psychology. And the peaceful inquiry had become the center of an impromptu space station, with ships from dozens of species maintaining careful distances while their representatives shuttled back and forth trying to understand what they were witnessing. Let me get this straight, said Professor Quillmort of the Regellian Institute for Xenopsychology, addressing Admiral Stone across Captain Zorble's conference table. Earth's standard response to a missing civilian is to deploy a battle fleet capable of conquering a small system? That's correct, the Admiral replied calmly. And this is considered normal behavior. Standard operating procedure. For all humans? Any human, anywhere, under any circumstances. Professor Quillmort made rapid notes on his data pad. Fascinating. And the cost of such operations? The Admiral shrugged. Irrelevant. You can't put a price on human life. But surely there must be some limit to the resources Earth is willing to expend. No. No? No? No limit. If it takes 1 ship or 1,000 ships, 1 day or 1,000 days, 1 credit or the entire Earth treasury, we bring our people home. The conference room fell silent except for the sound of various species breathing, clicking, or making whatever sounds they made when they were trying to process information that didn't quite fit into their world view. Jake, who had been listening to this exchange with growing amazement, finally spoke up. You know, Admiral, when you put it like that, it sounds kind of extreme. Mr. Murphy, there's nothing extreme about loyalty. No, sir, but maybe bringing 3 dreadnoughts to rescue 1 guy from some friendly scientist might be a little bit overkill? The Admiral considered this seriously. Perhaps. But consider the alternative. What if they hadn't been friendly scientists? What if they'd been slavers or pirates or hostile aliens planning to dissect you for scientific purposes? Captain Zorble made a small choking sound. Then you'd be dead, the Admiral continued, and I'd be explaining to your family and friends why we didn't bring enough firepower to save you. That's not a conversation I'm willing to have. Dr. Fizbin tentatively raised a wing arm. Admiral, not to question your methods, but don't you think that assuming everyone is hostile until proven otherwise might cause diplomatic problems? Dr. Fizbin, with respect, Earth's primary concern is not galactic diplomacy. Our primary concern is bringing our people home safely. Everything else is secondary. Ambassador Quicksnort, who had been observing from a corner, stepped forward. Admiral Stone, may I ask a hypothetical question? Certainly. If another species deployed a similar fleet to retrieve one of their citizens from Earth, how would humanity respond? The Admiral didn't hesitate. We'd assume they were conducting a rescue operation and offer any assistance we could provide. You wouldn't see it as an act of aggression? Why would we? They're just trying to help their people. The ambassador turned to his aide. Make a note, humans appear to be literally incapable of understanding why other species find their behavior threatening. Jake was beginning to look uncomfortable. Admiral, I'm starting to think maybe we should have called ahead or something. These folks are really nice, and I'd hate for them to get in trouble because they helped me. Mr. Murphy, you're right. This has become unnecessarily complicated. The Admiral activated his communicator. Admiral Stone to Fleet Command. Implement Cultural Exchange Protocol 7. Cultural Exchange Protocol 7? Captain Zorble asked nervously. Standard procedure for situations where our rescue operations have caused diplomatic complications. We provide compensation, technology transfers, and ongoing protection to anyone who aids human civilians. Protection? Clixon's voice cracked. Of course, you're friends of Earth now. That means something. Within an hour, human engineering teams were swarming over the peaceful inquiry, upgrading systems, installing new technology, and generally turning the modest research vessel into something that looked like it could take on a small fleet. This is really not necessary, Captain Zorble protested as he watched humans installing what appeared to be military-grade shield generators. Captain, replied Chief Engineer Rodriguez, Admiral's orders. Any friend of Jake's is a friend of ours, and we take care of our friends. But we're researchers, not warriors. Doesn't matter. You helped one of ours, so now you're under Earth's protection. Congratulations, you're now probably the safest research vessel in the galaxy. Dr. Fizbin watched in fascination as human medics upgraded her medical bay with technology that was at least 50 years ahead of anything the Glimmerwings had. This is incredible, she murmured. But why are you giving us all this? Doc, said Lieutenant Harris, the human medical officer overseeing the upgrade, you saved Jake's life. Far as we're concerned, that makes you family. Family? Me. Yeah, and we look after family. Meanwhile, Jake had somehow become the center of attention for xenopsychologists from across the galaxy, all trying to understand the mechanism behind human pack loyalty. It's really not that complicated, Jake explained to his growing audience. Someone needs help, you help them. Someone helps you, you help them back. It's just basic decency. But the scale of the response began Professor Quillmort. Look, Professor, let me put it this way. If your neighbor's house was on fire, would you help put it out? Of course. What if it was someone from the next town over? Well, yes, I suppose. What if it was someone from another planet? Aye, that would depend on the circumstances. See, that's where we're different. To humans, it doesn't matter if you're from the next street over or the next galaxy. If you need help, and we can help, we help. It's that simple. And if helping is expensive or dangerous? Jake shrugged. Then it's expensive or dangerous. So what? Professor Quillmort made more notes. Fascinating. Your species appears to have extended kin selection behavior to include the entire universe. If you say so, Professor. We just call it being human. 2 weeks later, Captain Zorble stood on the bridge of his newly upgraded ship and tried to come to terms with his new reality. The peaceful inquiry now boasted defensive systems that could probably hold off a small invasion, medical facilities that were the envy of core worlds, and a communications array so advanced it could apparently contact Earth instantaneously from anywhere in the galaxy. Incoming transmission from the Centauri Research Station, announced Navigator Pip, who was still getting used to their new quantum encrypted communication system. On screen, Zorble replied. The viewer showed Dr. Clax Thor, a respected Centaurian xenobiologist, looking uncharacteristically nervous. Captain Zorble, Dr. Clax Thor began, I'm calling because we've encountered a situation. We've found a human in distress. Oh no, Zorble muttered. The human appears to be injured, but we're afraid to help them. What if Earth sends another fleet? What if we trigger another diplomatic incident? Captain, we need your advice. What's the proper protocol for helping a human? Zorble looked around his bridge at his crew, all of whom were staring at him expectantly. Somehow, without trying, they had become the galaxy's leading experts on human rescue procedures. Dr. Clax Thor, he said wearily, help them. Just help them. Humans are surprisingly reasonable once you get past the terrifying military response thing. Are you sure? Trust me, the military response is much worse if you don't help them. After signing off, Zorble turned to find Klickson approaching with a data pad. The former paranoid engineer had transformed into the galaxy's most sought-after expert on human psychology, and his book, So You Found a Human, a practical guide, was already in its third printing. Captain, Klickson said, I've received 17 more requests for consultation this week. The Vegan Trade Consortium wants me to design protocols for human-safe shipping routes. The Andromedan Defense League wants a seminar on human threat assessment. And the Galactic Council is offering me a permanent position as Director of Human Affairs. Congratulations, Zorble said, though he wasn't sure if congratulations were appropriate. I suppose this is better than hiding behind consoles every time something unusual happens. Much better, Klickson agreed, though I have to admit, the more I learn about humans, the more concerned I become about their expansion into our part of the galaxy. Why's that? Captain, I've been studying their history, their culture, their expansion patterns. Do you know what I've discovered? What? They're not expanding to conquer or colonize. They're expanding to help. Every human colony, every trade route, every diplomatic mission, it's all about making sure they can reach anyone who might need assistance. They're not building an empire, Captain. They're building the galaxy's largest search and rescue operation. Zorble considered this. Is that a bad thing? I'm not sure, Klickson replied. But I do know one thing. The galaxy is about to become a much more helpful place, whether it wants to or not. Dr. Fizbin looked up from her medical station, where she was reviewing treatment protocols that human medics had developed specifically for glimmerwing physiology. Speaking of helping, Captain, I've received an invitation to attend the Interspecies Medical Conference on Earth. Apparently, they want me to teach a course on non-human emergency medicine. Are you going? What? I think I have to. After everything they've done for us, how can I say no? Navigator Pip cleared her throat. Captain, we're receiving a priority message from Earth. It's Jake. Put him through. Jake's familiar face appeared on the screen, grinning widely. Hey there, Captain. How's the new ship treating you? Very well, Jake, thank you. Though I'm still not sure we deserve all these upgrades. Are you kidding? You saved my life. This is the least we could do. Jake's expression grew more serious. Actually, I'm calling because I wanted to give you a heads up. I'm putting together another cargo run, this time with medical supplies for the Rigelian colonies. I was wondering if you'd like to come along as a consultant. A consultant? Cover. Yeah, you know, to help with any alien species we might encounter. You're kind of famous now as the guy who figured out how to handle humans without starting a war. Zorble looked around at his crew, who were all nodding encouragingly. I suppose we could accompany your convoy. Great. Oh, and Captain? Thanks again for everything. You folks really are the best. After the transmission ended, Zorble settled into his captain's chair and contemplated the strange turn his life had taken. 3 weeks ago, he'd been a simple research captain with a modest ship and a modest mission. Now he was apparently the galaxy's go-to expert on human relations, his ship was a technological marvel, and his engineer had become a best-selling author. Captain, Pip announced, we're receiving another distress call. It's from the Outer Rim trading post. They say they've found an unconscious human in their docking bay and they're afraid to wake him up. Zorble sighed. Set course for the Outer Rim. And Pip. Yes, Captain. Send them a copy of Klickson's book. Chapter 3 covers proper human awakening procedures. Already done, Captain. As the Peaceful Inquiry engaged its new faster-than-light drive system, courtesy of Earth engineering, Zorble reflected on the lesson he'd learned. In trying to do one simple act of kindness, he'd accidentally discovered something remarkable about humans. They didn't just believe in helping others, but they built their entire civilization around it. And somehow, without quite meaning to, the galaxy was becoming a better place because of it. Even if it did require the occasional fleet deployment to make the point. "Captain," Dr. Fizbin called from her station, "I'm reading 17 more ships dropping out of hyperspace. They're all different species, all heading for the same coordinates we are." "Let me guess," Zorble said wearily. "They all want to observe proper human rescue protocols." "That's what it looks like." "Oh, and Captain, 3 of them are human ships." Apparently Jake called ahead to make sure we had backup. Zorble's antennae drooped. Of course he did. As the peaceful inquiry flew toward its next adventure, Captain Zorble couldn't help but smile. The galaxy had certainly become more complicated since they'd picked up that floating escape pod, but it had also become more interesting. And if the price of that was occasionally having to explain to panicked aliens that humans really were just trying to help, well, that seemed like a fair trade. After all, someone had to keep an eye on humanity's enthusiastic approach to interstellar friendship, even if it did involve the occasional overwhelming display of military force. But that, Zorble had learned, was just how humans said we care about you. And really, when you thought about it, there were worse problems to have in the galaxy than a species that cared too much. Even if their definition of caring did tend to involve dreadnoughts.